We are going to get underway with our final panel discussion, talking about building a mall of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel are already in position. I didn't even need to invite you onto the stage. So panel, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to make a record here that we're going to have more people on the panel than we have in the audience. and being on the panel, everybody here is really dedicated, very nice people, but you're all in the back of the room. So it feels difficult, but we're going to do our best to address the topic at hand. And what the exciting thing is, we all have a stake in building the mall of the future, and we all have a different position about it. And I think today we have the opportunity to have some leading experts talk about this. I'm going to prompt some questions. I think that'll get us through the majority of the program, but hopefully we can open it up for question and answers later. So I'm joined today by two leading retailers, a leading real estate industry consultant, and the CEO of a large development company. So I'd like to introduce the panel. We'll start from the very far right. Fahad Kazim. Fahad is partner and head of infrastructure and real estate advisory for KPMG in the Lower Gulf. And I was just commenting earlier how happy I am to know that he has been really in shopping center development and leasing and understands the real life challenges. And to Fahad's immediate right is Avijit Yadav, who is the CEO of Tamdeen Mall Management in Kuwait. And if you're familiar with the shopping center industry and the GCC, we consider Tamdeen's shopping centers to be of the highest caliber, and that's thanks to Avi, the owners, and his team. So welcome to the panel. And to Avi's right is Amina Flaifel, who's head of real estate for Alhokair Fashion Retail. And Amina was telling me earlier that her territory, she is responsible for about 1,200 retail shops, primarily in Saudi Arabia, but also in Egypt and Jordan and into the CIS countries and the Balkans. So she's a very busy young lady with a lot of responsibility. And to my left is Jerome Georges Vivien, who is the country manager for AZADEA Group. And I'm sure everybody in the room understands AZADEA is a building conglomerate of magnificent retail brands and F&B brands that's been growing over the past 25 years. So we'll get started. I have a question for each of the panel, which is how will the mall of the future be different than the malls of today? So we'll start with Avi. And like I said, you have some of the best shopping centers, but you're already developing the mall of the future in many ways.
Sorry, your question is how the mall is going to be different?
Well, my question is that you are already running some of the best shopping centers in the region. What do you see different in the future? What considerations do we have to take into when we make the new mall of the future?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of change going on right now as we manage our malls. And one of the things we are very focused on doing is remaining in the physical world. You hear a lot about the digital world. We are not experts in that area. So one of the things we are trying to do is that in the physical world itself, we do a phenomenal job in creating great places, because whatever is happening is going to happen, but we should not lose the edge that we have. And we are embracing digital to the best of our ability. We are watching what's happening, what is being done by other malls. We are watching what the retailers are doing. We are embracing what we can, which is going to, improve our mall performance and the experience. And we are studying and seeing what is going to happen and what we should adopt and what we should not. Because a lot of the malls are actually just aping the retailers, and that's not really our business. The third thing we are trying to do for the mall of the future is to make sure we get retailers who are, building those phenomenal experiences in the digital as well as in the physical world. So, like in the past, we thought that there's a great retailer, we should get this retailer as part of our mall. Now we don't do that. We sit and question the retailer in great depth as to what is the experience that they're going to bring to the table. So, you know,
So you're talking about when you're pulling together the design concept or the development vision, you spend more time understanding the business model of each of these retailers or service providers or entertainment providers, and then helping craft the new shopping center offer.
Yeah.
Amina, let's talk about, you go meet a lot of landlords. Do you think they're prepared for the mall of the future, or are they living in the past?
A tricky question.
It's a loaded question. I have my answer.
To be realistic,
You have to speak a little closer. There you go.
yeah. To be realistic, some developers understand the challenges that we are facing post-COVID, and they are prepared to introduce new concepts for shopping journey, if we can call it like that. Some other developer is still not to the standards of new concepts. They are not fully prepared for the new challenges, the new upcoming industry.
So you'll be a landlord that's showing you a leasing opportunity, but you don't even think they're up to today's standards. You expect more from them.
Exactly.
Okay, so planning the mall of the future may be reserved for the most expert companies like Tamdeen, like Majid Al Futtaim, like Ymar Properties, who have that sophistication. But I think also to talk about you as a retailer not being happy with which is really a service that the mall provides you, I think it's good to be discerning and have high standards and always be pushing. Jerome, what's your idea about the mall of the future? Or are you sitting in the AZADEA offices saying, you know, we wish malls would do this and that?
You know, I think that I'm going to use a word which is probably overworked, but I do believe in the experience. And I think that some malls, some landlords have really understood it. Some others are still ignoring it. It's not because you have a single attraction. It's not because you have, I would say, more restaurant than the neighbor, that in fact you're attractive. I think that malls need definitely to be built as cities with not only with hotels connected, you can sleep, you can drink, you can eat, but also anything else. I mean, you can have so many other things, concert, art center, spas, etc., etc. And I think that the future of the malls have to be built like this. It's not only one single attraction.
What do you think, Fahad, about the mall of the future? You've been involved with some mega projects that wanted to be the mall of the future.
Definitely, and I think I second the views of my fellow panelists over here. Before answering that question, though, one thing that's very important is the pandemic really accelerated a lot of the change that we were seeing slowly creep up to how developers as well as retailers were approaching malls in general. So we ran a couple of reports recently over the last year or so. One that focused more on the outlook of CEOs, generic in terms of the sectors that it covered, and another that was more focused around the future of retail. And if I was to decipher a couple of key messages that came out of there, and I think is very relevant to how both mall operators as well as retailers view the future. One of them is around the business model that's being followed and the partnership models that are being followed. So we're seeing a lot more collaboration, and I guess, Phil, you mentioned it very clearly. It's no longer sitting in separate silos and designing something that no one approaches. It's having a collaborative approach to that, and that's more prevalent in the market now. And another thing that, unfortunately, we always use the very, very famous term, customer is king. But never more so than today are we building a customer-centric experience. So we start working on projects around customer journey. How do I improve that? What can we offer them both from an experiential point of view, but as well as from a technology point of view? So all these touch points started becoming more important.
Right. So you talk about how the customer would engage with the property on a digital basis, the parking facilities, the public restrooms, the prayer rooms, the common areas, the air conditioning, all the things that people form an opinion about the mall. And I think your point's very well taken that we used to just get 4 department stores, 200 shops, 3 restaurants, and we call that a mall in the old days. But today, department stores are less relevant. What's more relevant is H&M or Zara or Nike or Apple. Those are the drivers. But as we go more into a splitting of the market between e-commerce and physical, maybe we don't need as much physical space. So then we start thinking, well, you said hotels, residential towers, medical centers, arts centers. And I think Dubai actually led the way when we started 25 years ago at the city center adding hotels, and then Festival City and Dubai Mall and Mall of the Emirates and, you know, Ibn Battuta all have these elements that have been added. I know when I go back to Canada and look at the shopping centers there, unless I'm looking at something spectacular, everything is pretty much like it was 20 years ago. And I think they need to change a lot. But again, also from an investment standpoint, don't you agree that I can make X amount from my retail, I can make Y amount from my hospitality, I can make another amount from my selling residential. So in terms of a return on investment model, I think diversity is important. Avi, you had a lot of things happen at Tamdeen where you brought in some very untraditional uses to the regional mall. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so I'll take an example of 360. When we started off, it was a luxury mall. And we spent 10 years, you know, with this luxury mall, with Chihuly chandeliers and Patrick Blanc, you know, green walls and koi fish ponds and, you know, carpets and whatnots. But it was a mall.
Yeah.
We had, you know, so we looked at, when we did the expansion of this mall, we had an option to bring in more retail, which was missing in our mix. But we chose to bring in many other uses to reposition the whole thing around from a mall to something else. So, for example, we did bring in the hotel. We have a Grand Hyatt. But we brought in tennis. We brought in the Rafa Nadal Academy into the mall.
Now that's also a performance venue as well, right? Like
And-
Jerome was saying, a place for concerts.
Yes, so one was the Rafa Nadal Academy. That's the second academy outside of Mallorca. And then we built a multi-purpose, you know, arena which can accommodate around 5,000 people. Right. So that's where the ATP tennis tournament is going to happen. And that's where the concerts and, you know, all the... And then, realizing that we are not experts in this area, we gave it to Live Nation to manage. So, you know, we have sport, we have performances, and we built retail and parking also along with this, and the hospitality with the spas, and we got a French, really high-end French gym as part of the mall, in addition to all this, because, you know, athleisure is really becoming a very big, you know,
Right.
part of, you know, the customer requirement. So what we have now is we have moved from being a mall to a lifestyle destination. So what we say is this is where life happens in Kuwait. If you want to go for sport, if you want to go for shopping, if you want to go for leisure, if you want to sort of stay in some place where, you know, the concerts are happening, where the events are happening, and we started doing something called communification. We started reaching out to the communities and giving them these venues, and, you know, we started a whole program on teaching, you know, the youngsters in Kuwait how to play tennis.
Right.
We have, you know, so it totally changed. We looked at the use
Right.
and said we must really match this to the new generation and see how we can build in another 10 years into the project.
So
But that's-
tennis academies, performance venue, we wouldn't even have thought of that 20 years ago. they wouldn't even be in the cards. We're building a mall, we need a hypermarket, 5 department stores, a family entertainment center, 50 restaurants, and that's a mall. But today, the malls that we're designing today are going to open 4 and 5 years from now, and they're going to have to be sustainable for 30 years. And we know that Generation Y and X have very different tastes. I recently took a course where we studied a lot about the digital shopping habits and use of technology. So do any of the panelists have any examples? You talked earlier about learning more about your retailer's technology and about you having a mall platform.
So just to give you an example about the retailers, we started opening up car showrooms in our malls. But we really spoke to one guy and we said, listen, we don't want a car showroom because it's a car showroom. So this guy has come into our mall and he has taken up space and he creates a car showroom only for 6 weeks.
Okay, so he uses digital technology and large screens and
Yes,
interface.
and he brings the cars also. So every 6 weeks you have a new car showroom in the mall,
Right.
right? So that's very different from having, a BMW showroom in your mall for the next, like 5 years. So we had a problem. We were building a food hall in our mall, and the operator, with the pandemic and before that disappeared. So we created our own food hall with Kuwaiti food entrepreneurs only.
Okay, like
Right.
the timeout model,
Yes.
but using the best of Kuwait.
Only Kuwaiti entrepreneurs.
Okay, so we brought up some new ideas. Nobody talked about a food hall 5 years ago, but I think it's a response to shopping centers or retail destinations are very popular to gather food. Not everybody wants to go to the food court, nor does everybody want to go for a 1.5 hour sit-down meal. And then the best of is not a bad idea. Amina, I want to talk to you a bit about if we're not shooting for mall of the future, we're just trying to get to a good operating mall, model for a retailer. What do you think mall developers need to do to make it easier for Alhokair, for example, to operate? Because isn't the objective to give you a platform to have the highest possible sales? I mean, that's just the name of the game.
I think digital technology will help a lot. Landlords, developers need to improve and embrace technologies in all malls. Especially in Saudi Arabia, we don't have this technology like here in Dubai.
Right.
Dubai is much better. They are embracing technology in all malls. They put a chart to find where you are, where
Talk
are you
about
looking.
wayfinding.
Exactly.
Or digital applications.
Both.
Okay, right.
Both. Also, they need to work on a solution like, let's say, a smart parking solution. In some countries, still they have lack on new technologies in many parts.
Right. And often you'll meet developers that
To then work
are
for
maybe not flexible. I can't imagine that happening, but it does happen, that developers are not flexible because they don't understand your business model. That if you're selling a fashion brand, that you can afford X amount of sales in order for occupancy costs. So we talked earlier about the lack of reporting of sales in the kingdom. My personal feeling is, how can you be the captain of the mall or the manager of the mall and not know the sales? What's your feeling about mall sales and having rents tied to sales in Saudi?
To be honest, post-pandemic, we started to discuss many different models for rental and for sales. We started to share our sales with more developers. Some of them accepting the concept as a win-win scenario. We should both work on improving the sales because sales will get value for landlords.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not only for retailers,
Sure.
but more of developers, they don't understand this concept, and we are facing some difficulties to convince them to accepting the different models for retail business.
I find that so disappointing. The reason is I got in the mall business in 1981 in Canada, and the first day on the job, we were collecting sales from every store. And although we didn't have computers and we did it all on a manual spreadsheet, we still had in mind that Shoppers Drug Mart did $4 million last year, and we made $400,000 in percentage rent. It was our mindset. It's like we were increasing sales. Back to you, Jerome. What do you think malls need to do to make it a better environment for you and the brands you represent?
I think what we were talking about, the numbers, is quite important, because there is something which is somewhere a bit unfair. We are, as retailers, we are providing our data, and we are providing them, but we don't receive any information from the malls. We don't receive any audited information from the malls. And I think that
It's like a one-way street.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that it would be great in the future to have finally a real exchange, like any panel, FMCG panels. You can see the situation.
Or hotels.
Hotels.
Yeah, they're very transparent,
absolutely.
right?
So you can see the situation. So to be able also to know the flow, audited flow, audited numbers, why not the customer profile, why not which floor is working and not working. I mean, all this kind of information should be shared as well with us.
Do they do that in France?
No.
I'm just teasing. I think, again, back to my early days as a shopping mall manager, when we collected those sales, we also gave a monthly sales report to all the retailers. So if you had a shoe store, we may say that this month your shoe store is number 2 in a category of 16. We don't tell you what everyone else is doing.
It's existing.
We help you.
Exactly.
Right.
It's existing. You have few indicators which are existing in Europe, but not probably at the level I'm expecting.
No.
But it's existing.
I think what you're getting at, too, is as retailers get more sophisticated and more discerning, and sometimes you've been hurt by bad negotiation or bad representation, so you've got in a location that's not performing, you go backwards and you think, what should I have asked or what should I have known before I made this decision?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we all have interesting perspectives on how the landlord and tenant or developer and retailer relationship should exist. Now, we talk about mall of the future, but I think, and the panel earlier talked about the acceleration of e-commerce during the current pandemic. A lot of malls around the world lost a lot of tenants, and vacancy rates went up, but we didn't see it so much here. You know, I don't know, in Saudi, did you see a lot more vacancy, or the malls were owned by people with enough money that they could weather the storm?
Exactly. Not big malls is still maintaining good occupancy, but smaller malls, individual developers are suffering from this drop in occupancy.
Okay, how about Kuwait? Did you lose tenants?
Not in the marquee malls or the A malls.
Okay.
There's no loss of space.
I guess that could be also that a lot of the brands are owned by successful companies like Alhokair, AZADEA, Al-Shaya, Apparel, so they have enough weight to weather the storm. Was that part of it?
Probably, and we didn't have a big fall in sales in Kuwait. We didn't, because it's a captive market. It's the customers are mainly Kuwaitis. They have job security,
Right.
and there were travel restrictions, so they did not travel. So we actually saw luxury brand sales, 2xing, when the malls were open, because people were hanging around and they had nothing to do. So we didn't really face this problem at all.
Your experience with UAE, and you must go into a lot of shopping malls in your day-to-day. Did you notice any changes?
I think that we will all agree that we have in the UAE clearly an oversupply, a mall oversupply. We see already some malls dying and disappearing. That's the first thing. At AZADEA, what we try to do, it's always to give a chance to our stores. And we always try to save them by renegotiating with the landlords or by challenging, of course, our operational cost. But at the end, if we are losing, we are closing. That's one point. The second point is that you have, in the meantime, the pressure from the suppliers. Because the suppliers today, they tell us clearly, fewer, bigger, better. So it's also a point which is very important, because the malls, unfortunately, are losing a lot of stores because of that.
Yeah, okay.
Because of this new strategy.
Right.
We can talk about Zara, for example. I mean, this is typically the strategy today of Zara. In the past, we were having 1,500, 2,000 square meters. Today, we have 4,000 square meters in the biggest malls.
So go big and don't play the small game, and focus on the best malls and the best locations with the most customer flow, with the traffic that's your customer. That's the perfect solution. Okay.
That's the equation, yes.
Okay. Fahad, any comments on that relationship we're talking about with the retailers, and why we didn't see the attrition in the GCC?
In one way, I think there are a few answers to this. One was, I think, generally the response of governments in this region was swift. The response of some mall operators was swift, and the support that came across was timely.
Right.
In certain situations.
Right.
On the other side, the question of oversupply, especially when it comes to the UAE market, was something that was already in discussion a few years ago.
Sure.
So they already started being a small consolidation from certain players.
You're right. 2016, 17,
Correct.
18 were not great years.
Exactly.
Right. Their
So that
market
movement
contracted. Okay.
was already in place.
Right.
But what has changed, and what I think is common across all of the destinations today, is the flexibility in commercial modeling. I think there has started being a shift, not as fast as it should be and not as quickly as we need to get to the end goal, but there started being more flexibility on that shift of commercial model. The ability for the mall operator to share more data, more insightful data. Again, the level of transparency needs to increase.
That's interesting. So you're saying there are some malls that are reaching out and sharing market information with retailers to enhance the relationship.
Correct. But again, there's still ways to go over there, but the trend, the shift has started coming in place.
Right. Yeah.
And the last thing is, again, one of the things that is very common, that when you do lose a tenant, you do lose a collection of tenants, we have enough experience and agility and dynamism in the business to shift it across to different uses. Some great examples given already of flex spaces. Some great examples given of event spaces starting to come up.
Right.
So how these pop-ups started coming up within the mall dynamics is very new to us, and probably during this period where retailers were slightly hesitant to take additional GLA, however, we're more than happy to support the ecosystem by coming in a pop-up setup.
Okay, so we have 300 shops in the mall, 200 are fashion shops, but we only have a market today for 150. So what do we do with those 50 units? And you say, because this market has an entrepreneurial nature, that it incubated pop-up ideas that, like, I guess the first trampoline park in a mall would be a pop-up idea, and then all of a sudden now it's becoming almost an essential ingredient. And 25 years ago, it could be argued the FEC was that, and now the food hall and the medical center. Any more ideas of what's happening in malls that are changing tennis stadiums? I think when I heard about tennis stadium, I started thinking, when you talk about communitization, right? So you're basically saying amenities that normally be provided by the municipality or the state can now be provided by a private developer, so people can engage with the property at a different level than just going to the Carrefour or going to Zara or going to the burger place. Now I'm going there for music lessons. I'm going there for art. I'm going there for Live Nation event. So that's where we're going in the mall business.
That's where, as we say, that's where life happens. So if you can kind of, sort of tap into that,
Right.
it really, your commercial, like this tennis academy is highly profitable commercially.
Isn't it inherent when you say that's where life happens, that life doesn't necessarily happen online?
No, it does.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, you can experience purchasing online, you can order food online, but you
Yes.
can't actually be in a physical environment with your friends or family and experience life like you can.
You actually can, and I was just coming to that.
Here we go.
Because we believe that as we look way out into the future,
Right.
we are going to have the physical world, we're going to have the online world, and
Right.
we're going to have the virtual world.
Yes.
The meta or whatever they are
Yeah.
talking about now. I mean, we have some of our retailers like Gucci on there. We have Nike on there now. You're just studying and saying, okay, where's this going?
Yes.
We are talking to IKEA, and in one of the meetings they said, well, we are designing furniture for Mars.
Yes.
I said, really, that's way out. I don't think we are going to be going there.
Right.
These three worlds we can clearly see kind of coming up.
Yes.
There will be an overlap, and this overlap we will see where we fit into the other two worlds. One world we believe we are pretty good at, and we should remain focused on that, right?
That's your core competency.
That's
is
our
the
core
physical
competency.
presentation. Right.
And we should dabble in this area, but there are experts ahead of us. We should learn from them.
Right.
And we should then get into these spaces as we become better. Like, a very good example is Primaris in Canada launching Primarché,
Right. Right.
right? Where it is clearly, it's an inventory management model. It's a customer convenience model. But when I was reading that article, I was thinking, I really would like to know what Primaris is doing in the physical space. Where is the innovation in the physical space? Because that's very important to be done,
Right.
right? And, we had a grocery anchor come to us and tell us, listen, we have 17,000 square meters with you. We'd like to convert 9,000 into warehouse space. This is when the pandemic started. We said, well, you go out and rent a warehouse because we are not going to let you build a warehouse out of our mall.
Your space is too valuable.
Our space is too valuable. We
Right.
should not lose control of that.
Right. Okay.
And the other thing, I think, in the mall of the future, very important point, which I keep harping about, but we ourselves have not made progress because there's a clash commercially, is the biggest anchor of the mall is going to be the common area, where we have the flexibility, where we have the ability to do things, provided we let go of some of the money, right? And problem is that, that is so built into commercialization right
Oh,
now.
you're saying that your common area will generate X million a year, but you may use it for an alternative programming that's more community or entertainment,
Yes.
where you actually are paying to host it,
Yes.
but it's giving the offer more energy.
Yeah. So if we start thinking, of that as one of our anchors, we can do many things because mostly you talk to malls, they complain. We don't have flexibility. We actually do,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we're not leveraging it because it's money.
Yes, it's more
When-
capital investment.
So when we are able to sort of cross that bridge, I think we'll be able to sort of add a lot into the mall of the future.
Do you guys still want more questions, or should we open it? Has everybody felt that you've had your chance to express yourselves? Because we could open it to the floor. Is that a good idea? Oh, they're still here. Okay. Well, I think, first of all, I want to thank the panel because of very interesting comments, and it's a pleasure to meet everyone today. Let's see, does anybody have any questions for the panel, or are we all just anxious to roll up the day and go for the awards dinner tonight? Okay, thank you so much for attending, and thanks to Images and Retail Middle East Forum for the opportunity, and we wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.